I hate every moment of this. It's Romania Black. We're on episode 70 of Monster, and back when we started this arc, I don't know how many episodes ago, I was like, oh, well, by the Japanese 4-act structure, episode 70 is going to be the rule of 8. It's going to be the 8th episode. Shit's going to go down. And I was like, it's probably not. And then episode 67 happened, and I was like, okay. Episode 68 happened, and I was like, okay. Episode 69 happened, and I'm like, we're almost there, and we're here today, and I'm not ready. No. Not one bit. I'm not ready. No, because shit's getting real. Everybody in this damn town probably has a gun. This old couple that are like secret Nazis or something have been distributing them to everybody. Bonaparta is probably the hotel manager who's been like Hotel California-ing everyone. And then Grimmer and Lungay are there, which you would think would be a great thing, except Grimmer's probably gonna get mother trucking shot, and I'm gonna cry, and I hate life right now. I don't hate life. I love life, and I love being able to watch this show, but I am a bit worried. I am not having a good time, Cotton. Things are not going good. Life is not deja vu or whatever it is. I don't know. No. I'm just dreading this episode so much. But I wanted to go ahead and watch it because I didn't want anybody giving accidental hints or clues and me accidentally seeing it. So here we are, and we only have 5 episodes left of this whole damn series. No big deal. No big deal. So yeah, I do have some comments before we start. They're great comments. There's nothing wrong with that. One was from Death to Boredom saying that you can technically get a silencer for a machine gun. It's fine. So you can silence a machine gun. That's great to know. People could just come out of nowhere and kill half the characters I enjoy. That's fine. That's fine. Goob pointed out that we've now assembled the DILF Avengers. Which is so true. It's like you got Lungay, you got Grimmer, we've got Tenma on the way, Roberto could be there, Johan is probably there, that Opie mofo, Kristoff, is he in a hospital still? Who knows? I don't consider him a DILF, though. Rudy, is he going to be there? Reichwein, he's on the way. Bonaparta is this old hotel owner, I think so. I'm like, the DILF Avengers line got me real good. I just, I don't need Johan to be Thanos. I just don't need that right now. I don't need that. I don't need this couple winning the lottery to snap their fingers and my favorite characters die. I just, That's the problem with this series, because you get a real attachment to these characters, and this series is realistic enough that you're like, oh, come on now, you're not gonna kill them off. You're not gonna do that, right, show? And Urasawa's like, maybe. And you're like, no! So, and then Thomas Coman, 4191, talked a lot about children and memory in their comment. I think it was episode 67. They were talking about children and memory, and about how memory when you're younger is very malleable, and it's different despite the situation. And they talked about the tabula rasa, which is a Locke theory from the 17th century, where the human mind, it can sometimes imprint based on reactions from other people. So, it's the idea that Johan has picked up experiences from Nina and her telling him the story and claiming them as his own because of trauma. Now, look, do I think Johan was a traumatized child? Oh, God, yes. So is Nina. But here's my point. I mean, you have Nina and Johan, 2 traumatized kids. There's still a piece of the puzzle we don't know yet. There's still a piece of the puzzle that we don't have access to that I'm hoping in the next 5 episodes we find out from Johan's perspective. There's something missing that hasn't been revealed to us. There's one card in the deck we don't have, and I'm thinking it's going to be revealed to us before the end. But at the end of the day, the fact that Johan is an adult now, that is capable of, going back and reflecting, and the fact that Nina has told him, like, you're wrong. You've imprinted these memories, but that is not correct. It happened to me, not you. And the fact that he can kind of, go through that, what is he doing with that information, right? And I don't think that excuses Johan from all of the bad that he's done as an adult. I mean, here's the thing. Like, yeah, you were formed as a child with bad experiences, but when you're an adult and you know better, at some point you got to be like, yeah, you may have had a messed up shitty childhood, but you're an adult now. It doesn't, that's Tenma's kind of MO, where he tells Dieter, he's like, yeah, you've had a shitty past, but the rest of your life doesn't have to be that way. And you don't have to complete the rest of your life based on that past alone. So, and we've kind of gone through that with this season so far, but it reminded me a lot of, there's 2 books out there. I read them. I had a class in grad school we had to read. They're called Tweak and Beautiful Boy. And Beautiful Boy was made into a movie a few years back with, what's his face? He plays Michael Scott on The Office. But anyway, our class was divided into 2 groups, and we read both stories. One half of the class read Tweak, which is by the son, Nick Sheff, first, and the other one, Beautiful Boy, is read by David Sheff, the father, first. And so then we all came together. We read each story, we switched books, read the other story, and then we came back together as a class and talked about, like, whose side do you believe more? Because it's really talking about a son's addiction, the father dealing with that, and the son dealing with that, and relapse and rehab and all of this, and the people that are harmed along the way because of this addiction. And I read Tweak first, and I sided with the son. I was like, the son talks about, like, how his dad, was not helpful and was not exactly how the dad portrays himself in his version. And I believed the son. Now, the class that read Beautiful Boy first, they believed the dad. And it was this kind of, so our teacher did it as a social experiment to see, like, whoever's memory you encountered first, you kind of imprint on, and you believe that over other testimonies. And I think that can kind of apply to Monster, in that whoever you encountered first and whoever's testimony you kind of follow with, you don't quite believe the other stories as much as that original one, even when they possibly could be proven wrong or complicated. So I think that's definitely applicable to Monster, and I'd like to apply it more when we're done. But y'all, I just, as I'm dropping everything, I'm so tense today. I decided today I was going to watch this episode, and ever since I made that decision, I've just been on edge. I've been like, It's when you just know there's a sense of dread. You know that a bad thing is about to happen in whatever you're watching, and you're like, maybe if I just talk about it out loud, it won't happen. There's characters I don't want to die, and I think they're gonna die, and it's just gonna crush my soul. It's just gonna crush my soul, and I'm like, maybe it won't be as bad as I think it's gonna be. Maybe not. But y'all, I'm just delaying the inevitable, and we need to pull the Band-Aid off. So I'm going to forewarn you, my dogs may act up. They've been acting up the last couple days with my reactions. There's nothing much I can do about that. They'll probably start barking in a really tense and quiet scene, and it'll ruin the mood. But what can we do? So yeah, God. Special shout out to Anthony for getting me these files. My internet has acted up, the last couple weeks. And so having these files on hand has been really helpful. I was like, well, if I can't watch anything, I can at least finish Monster. Okay. We're fine. Everything's fine. It's episode 70, 5 episodes to go. We're going to be totally great. Everything's going to be fine, right? I'm going to get myself worked up, and then it's going to be the next episode where things go down. Just know it. Just know it. But okay, we've talked for nearly 10 minutes. We need to get started. So we are going to start episode 70 of Monster and just see what happens. And we're going to do this here in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this. What do I do? What would I write on Whiteboard Coon? What would I write? Oh my God! I stopped being able to just spit like everywhere. This episode was amazing. First of all, this episode was amazing. I don't know. This episode was amazing because people aren't dying yet, but we only have 4 episodes left, right? Or 5. We have 71, 72, 73. No, we have 4. We have 4 episodes left. Oh my God. I'm just floored, y'all. I'm just floored is where I'm at. And what do we say? What can we say? What can we say? I'm so in love with this show, and this climax is just ramping up. This is not what I thought was going to happen. I don't know what I had in mind. For some reason, I had Eva playing a bigger part in the finale in my head. For some reason, back when Lunge, we're going to talk about freaking Lunge in this. Back when this whole thing started, I had in my head this idea that in the climax, Eva was going to be working with Lunge, and they were going to be trying to track Tenma down to convict him of these crimes he didn't commit. And she was going to have this confrontation with Tenma. Tenma was going to have this confrontation with her and Lunge. And I had in my mind that Tenma was going to go off and try to take Johan on by himself, and then Eva and Lunge were going to get in the way and prevent that from happening. And then it was just going to be this giant thing. And Eva does not seem to be playing a part at this point in the story. She's watching Dieter, which, thank goodness. Reichwein and Rudy are getting stuff put together. Nina is going off with Rudy to go and take on Johan, which we're going to talk about. And Lunge's gone Rambo. Lunge was a mind melt in this episode for so many reasons. I can't wait to talk to you all about it. I was losing my shit, being like, are you, like Lunge, how, what? And Grimmer has so many effing death flags on him that at this point, I've just accepted fate. I've accepted Grimmer's gonna die. I've accepted it's going to crush my soul. I've accepted that it's going to ground me into the dirt, and I'm just going to sit there and wallow in a puddle of my own tears. I've accepted this because there were so many death flags on Grimmer this episode that I was like, son of a bitch. I was like, we can't have nice things. You can't be serious. Lunge is the crazy one that's going to live. He's the insane mofo that's going to live through this. That's all there is to it. And I just... So, okay, calm down. I'm going to calm down. I'm going to be feral this entire discussion, so I hope you're ready for that. I hope you're ready. I'm on adrenaline. I'm drinking too much coffee. I've been on, you know, like when you dread something all day long, you dread it. You dread it, and you build up this, like, adrenaline anxiety in you, and you're like, I'm dreading this moment. It's going to be okay, but I'm going to dread it. And you build it all up, and then when it gets over, it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be, but then you have nothing to do with this energy, and so it's just pouring out of you. That's where I am right now. Okay, I'm going to throw this ball to Huckleberry the entire time as we go through this. So let's just dive into this episode and make sure my sound's off, you know, for this. Oh, thank God, Wim. So Wim didn't kill the kids, which is, you know, which is good because Alvin, Simon, and Theodore, they were just pissing me off. I'm like, all they do is bully this kid. All they do is bully him for no reason. And then they end up getting shot. So you know what? I'm not here for child violence, but those kids should have stayed inside. That's all I'm gonna say. I just, what a bunch of assholes, these little pricks. And they just keep, like, bullying him. The interesting thing about this is we'll talk about the dad, right? We'll talk about the dad and about preconceived notions and perception. And the way that Urasawa weaves this story is so masterful and just so subtle, but so good. But these kids, I felt so bad for Wim. And Wim, up until now, like his dad, Wim and his dad both share this mindset of, I mean, you can call them being cowardly, whatever, but they don't want to kill someone. They're just like, am I being hurt enough to hurt another human? And up until this point, no. And the dad caves first, but I'm so proud that Wim, who had this gun all along, could have shot those 3 kids. Like, he had the bullets to do it. He could have shot and killed all 3 of them, but he didn't. He withstood the beating that he got and didn't take their life. That's courage to me. Like, that's brave. It's brave. It's more brave to be able to take it and know that you can take it than to complete that cycle of violence, right? I'm like, at least they beat him up under an awning where he wasn't getting rained on, but this poor kid, What a way to start the opening, right? What a way to start that opening. I also noticed in this OP, I can't believe I didn't notice until now, but the stand that Tenma has been walking past the last 70 episodes is the hot dog stand that girl gave the hot dog to Grimmer in front of. Oh my God. I was like, I just instantly, like, I've been watching the same OP for 70 weeks of my life. And I'm just now noticing that. Oh my God. And the train station, everything. And the booze, the bullet hole, everything. Oh my God. It's wild. It's wild. So we need to get past this OP though. Yeah, the pub and the town massacre. Man, when you have a title like that, this town massacre, you're like, okay, we're in for a treat. We're in for some psychological shit's about to go down. What are we going to do about that? So, oh my God, y'all. So, okay, chapter 70, the town massacre. I can't wait to get to the manga of this. I cannot wait. So, yeah, the thing that's kind of very creepy about this is the moment the drunk dad comes into the bar, right? And it's all the men there gathered and they all kind of stare at him. It's like they're having a clan meeting is basically what it looked like to me. Like this secret society meeting that you're not welcome here and treating the dad like an outsider. What's so fascinating about this is that the dad, he tries to pay off the tab and they're like, we're not taking your son's money that he earned for you, which fair, whatever. But he did try to pay for the drink, so that's a thing, at least. But what's interesting is the dad hasn't killed anyone in this story. Now, don't count our chickens before they hatch. He may end up shooting Grimmer. He may shoot anybody. He may shoot his own kid. We don't know. The drunk dad may end up shooting somebody very important. He may shoot Tenma. Everybody's got guns. This whole episode, I kept thinking everybody was going to get shot, and I was just like, the whole time. But he doesn't shoot anybody. And I think it's so important to talk about preconceived notions and perceptions because from the beginning of us being in this town, I had the stereotype that the dad was going to be the first person to pull the trigger. And we don't know if he shot the dog or not. We don't know. That's the thing. You don't know if he shot the dog. He was irritated at the dog, but somebody else could have shot him. Those 3 kids were shot by somebody else, not Wim. So I like that Urasawa is saying, yeah, you think this drunk would be the first person to pull the trigger. But no. It's these upstanding men of the town in this bar that are the ones that shoot each other and kill each other. And that is so crazy. And that whole message of the small town, like who you think is the one that's going to get tried. We've got a bunch of election stuff going on where I live. And one thing that has come out recently, like in the news, is that there was a couple people that were found in drug possession. Like we're talking like methamphetamine. We're talking like some hardcore drugs. And because of who they were in the town, because they were relatives of upstanding citizens, they got off the hook. And then this person that's running for election pointed out, like, yeah, this person let them off the hook, but this other person that was just a nobody in the town that nobody had any affiliation with, they got sentenced to 5 years in prison for the same crime. And it's just it's that perceived notion, right? Because these people look so spick and span and polished, they seem to get away with it. But then you have somebody that the town deems as unclean, and they're the ones that get the brunt of the blame and bullying. Now, not to say the dad that's an alcoholic is a saint. He beats Wim. He abuses him. He is not a saintly person, nor should we be somebody that's like, oh, poor him. But it's just funny that he's not killed anybody yet, and everybody else in the town is like shooting each other. It's just a commentary that people are humans and humans are dumb. We're all dumb and we make mistakes. I don't feel empathy for the dad. I don't feel sympathy. He's like shit to his son and that sucks. And I hate that for Wim. But I think it's an interesting commentary that Urasawa makes that the people that judge him so hard are the people that fire first. So, and they're no better than him. That's kind of the thing. It's not that the dad is a good person, but those people judging him are not good either. That's the thing about it. But man, the way that Urasawa draws, the way they look at him, like he's just so unwelcome, right? And they don't want him here. And just that everybody giving him that look like, get out. We don't want your kind here. And then he leaves. And then when he comes back, he hears them say that man wouldn't pull the trigger, and he comes back and calls their bluff, and then they're all dead. So it's like, you literally dodged a bullet, sir. You literally dodged a bullet. The thing that's crazy, though, is we don't know what sparked the violence. We don't know what sparked. That's kind of that's the most disturbing thing about this episode, is that all you hear is like a poo, 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 like just gunshots. Like, if you watch an action movie, you think that it's like this big explosion, all these sounds. No, gunshots in real life is just poo. It's kind of incredible growing up around guns my whole life and hunting and doing stuff like that. It's crazy how something that makes it makes a loud sound, don't get me wrong, but it's not as glorified as some people believe it is, like in the movies, and something that just seems so simple is something so destructive, right? And it's crazy. But the thing of it is, we don't know who fired the first shots in the bar. We don't know what the deal was. We don't know what caused it. That's kind of half the scary thing about this episode, is everything is happening without us seeing everything. So we just get snippets in the aftermath, and we're like, well, how'd we get to this point? What's going on? What's happening? And hell, Tinma's getting there in the middle of all this. And so the timelines have converged. Tinma is there with Lunge and Grimmer. He just doesn't know it yet. And is helping save those people in the town. Of course, Tinma, the doctor, has to stop what he's doing and help save the family, because of course he does. He's Tinma. And so it's wild. This episode was an adrenaline trip from start to finish. Then we have some cops that show up. Poor Merkel just being dead, and then this guy and so we find out Roberto is the one. I like that we finally get, like, poor Conrad. He's just sitting there, and the blood is like expanded further, and he's just drenched. Like, the fact that we get that it's Roberto killing these people. Here's the crazy thing. Like, is Johan even there? That's the wild thing. Is Johan even there? Because, I mean, we assume that whoever emailed Nina was Johan. We assume that, right? Because it's like back at the castle at the beginning, we assume that was Johan luring her there. But here's the thing. The people that killed the Fortners were the two officers hired by, we think, Johan. But then it's like Roberto has been acting as this agent the entire time. So is Roberto doing all of this under what he thinks is Johan's orders? Or is Johan literally there? It calls into question, do we think that Roberto could have emailed her back at the beginning to lure her to the castle? Or was it Johan? I mean, I think it's Johan, but the possibility is always still there, right? I think it's Johan that's emailing Nina to go to Ruinheim. But then here's the thing. This is the weird thing about that whole situation. Because, I'll probably touch base on it when we get to that part of the scene. If Johan really wanted to kill Nina, if he wanted to erase her and eat her like the monster ate the other monster, why didn't he kill her back with Peter before Tinma got there? Why'd he leave her? If he didn't want to kill her and erase her from the scenario like what Rudy and them talk about, then why didn't he just kill her back at the castle? He had a gun, right? He could have done it. He could have probably shot before she did. He probably has a better shot than she does. I mean, why didn't he? And then if he loves his sister and he doesn't want to kill her, and he left her to live at the castle thinking she's either going to kill herself or she's not, and he's like, well, I'm just going to leave you to your own devices. You do what you want to do. And he did that. Then why invite her to Ruinheim where you know people are dying? And you're trying to do this mass suicide. Why invite her to that when you just let her go 5 minutes ago? That makes no damn sense. So that's kind of why I'm thinking that it was Roberto hacking the email and sending it to her, because Roberto knows that Nina exists, knows that it's his twin sister, and he's like, well, I'm going to get rid of her too, and this is what Johan wanted. I'm doing everything Johan wanted, and so I'm going to lure everyone here and kill them like he would want because I'm trying to appease him, and then Johan's going to be like, what the fuck? So, I don't know. It makes no sense to me why Johan would spare her here and let her go, but then invite her to a place where she will be in the line of fire. If you don't want her to die, why are you inviting her to places where she could die? I'm just like, Johan, you make no sense, honey. Unless it's not Johan, unless it's Roberto. And again, this show, it keeps Johan so mysterious. We don't know if it's Johan. We just don't know. We don't know if it's Roberto pulling the strings and doing it in Johan's behalf. Is Johan going to show up here? That's the card that's not been played yet, right? But we do find out that Roberto is there. Ugh. And this guy, if I'd been him, I would have gotten that police car and I would have drove at least a mile down the road and then called for backup. Standing out there in the rain with your door open when you know there's a possible killer around, horror movie 101. You just don't do that shit. And then Roberto shows up to get the gun. Yeah. Okay. So he's here, of course. So yeah, and the gun that the old couple's been giving out is the same one that like the boy had and all that. And he goes back and they're all dead. Yeah, of course. And then he freaks out. But yeah, it's just there's dead people everywhere. People are shooting everyone. It's a battlefield. Grimmer's like, well, this sucks. What is happening? And Grimmer just walking in the rain. Oh my God. It's wild. And that's when he finds Wim. And just the look on Grimmer's face when he's like, what's wrong, Wim? What's wrong, Wim? And he's just sitting there in the rain staring at that poor boy. And the thing that breaks my heart is that Grimmer doesn't judge him. He doesn't get mad at Wim. He doesn't judge him for if he had shot him. I don't think he would have judged him any different because he's a kid. And I was just, it broke my heart. I was like, oh, Grimmer. And then the fact of him like just grabbing Wim and saying it's okay, it's me. And like just how far Grimmer has come because he couldn't cry or be emotional over his own son's death. And then he had that scene with Milosh. And then the way that he gives Wim the biggest hug and says, don't be scared. Everything's all right. And then to calm down, and just sits there and embraces him. I'm like, son of a bitch. That is heartbreaking. Just Grimmer is the best. And I'm like, there's people dying all around them, and Grimmer stops what he's doing, puts down his duffel bag that Timma could fit inside, and just gives Wim the biggest hug. It's a lot. It's a lot emotionally, and it breaks my heart. Oh, it breaks my heart. And then he's like, where'd you get the gun from? And I was like, like Bruce Banner, about to go freaking Bruce Banner on the whole thing. So then we go back to the Hotel Verstek, the hiding place. Where we have the one officer lived. He managed to get out alive and crawl his way back to the hotel. Dear sweet baby Jesus. Yes, he managed to crawl back. And Lunge's like, yeah, things are really bad here. Yeah, your gun's gone. The phones aren't working. Was it someone who lives here? And he's like, he was an outsider. And then I love that Lunge's like, all right, you old bitches, what's going on? I was like, yes. I was afraid the whole time the old couple had guns on them because they've been handing out guns. Why wouldn't they have guns on them? I was afraid they were going to turn a gun on Lunge or Grimmer and fire at them, but no. And he's like, was he one of your friends? And they're just like, who are you talking about? And he's like, how many men do you have here? And he's like, what are you trying to say? And then that's when Grimmer shows up and was like, yeah, there's been a bunch of guns distributed in this town. And they even gave one to this kid. Here's the crazy thing. The crazy thing is we talked about, what's his name? Was it Petra? Was it Petra back in, oh God, that was like in the 40s. The episode of the 40s, right? It's when we first met Grimmer. When we first met Grimmer, he had the run-in with Petra. And Petra, who had been in charge of Kinderheim and stepped down, had been indoctrinating children all over again. But the indoctrination he was doing was teaching them to love and teaching them to become better people so that they couldn't be affected by Kinderheim. That was his whole thing. And it was like, okay, Petra, you did this thing. All right. Good on you. Yes. Now here's the complicated thing. Because back then, we didn't really know Petra. We didn't really know what he did. He denied having a big part of Kinderheim. So you're like, okay, fine, be that way. And the way we got to know Petra, I forgave Petra. I was like, okay, you did these awful things, but now you've helped these kids become better people. Now we have that situation. Now we're framing it against Bonaparta, who we have seen do some really nasty shit. Like maybe cause a mass murder amongst all of them. Imprison a pregnant woman and monitor her and do these creepy drawings, do the monster's letter, have her like lover killed, basically took her twins from her and like did all this nasty shit, indoctrinated these kids. We've seen him do some horrific things. And now Urasawa's like, well, yes, he did. But now he's decided to camp out here and turn over a new leaf. What do we do with that? I mean, the first thing I think of is RuPaul's Drag Race, because of course I do. And I think of, there's a season where there's a drag queen called Candy Muse, and someone's like, well, I'm going to turn over a new leaf now. And Candy Muse is like, when you turn over a leaf, it's still a leaf. And I was like, ha! So it's like, if you're going by this logic, like, does this make Bonaparta any better just now because he's atoning? Does that take away from all that he's done? I don't think so. But what do we do with this, right? What do we do with this? Because he seems to have this pretty big affinity with Wim, and he's like, a gun? You didn't. And that's when Grimmer says, you're not trash. Don't pay attention to those creeps. You were put on this earth for a reason. You empowered him with those words. Grimmer's like, and a part of you wonders, like, did Bonaparta realize what he was doing? Did he realize that by doing the polar opposite of what Kinderheim and his indoctrination at the readings were, he was empowering Wim with the ability and courage to not take a life? Does he realize that? Or is that just something he said that he doesn't realize the power of those words now, until now when Grimmer's saying it back to him? And he's like, he didn't shoot his gun, and all the bullets are still in it. He held on to everything you taught him. And then Bonaparte's like, okay. And he goes over to give Wim a hug and says, you're amazing, Wim. And it's so weird because in all the flashbacks and all the other times we have seen Bonaparta, he has looked like this cold and isolating and creepy figure. And now he looks like this sentimental, like whimsical old man. It is crazy. What it's reminding me of is there was an old special. It was back in the 90s. I remember watching it. It was like there was a news special where this news team from America, they tracked down a lot of former SS officers who had escaped Germany after World War II, and they had all found retirement communities in Australia, of all places. And I remember watching that special because I was obsessed with World War II history back when I was a kid. And so I remember watching that special, and it was the creepiest thing I think I may have ever watched, because they went to these men's houses, and by this point in the 1990s, these men were in their late 80s, like early 90s themselves. They were old men, like they were, close to death. And they interviewed these men, and they seemed like just normal people. Like they were SS officers who had been in charge of concentration camps, killing people, like millions of people. And the way they talked in those interviews, they were like, nothing happened. We don't know anything you're talking about. And the interviewer was like, well, no, we know you were in these gas chambers killing people. And they're like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't know. It was creepy. It was disturbing. It was creepy, like them denying it and acting like there was nothing that had happened in their past. And it's like, oh my God. But the way that those people were in the interview, it reminds me so much of Bonaparta in this moment. And the fact that, this is taking in place, in Germany and surrounding countries, it seems there are parallels there, but it's so fascinating. And to see that, and I know that Poppy Bonaparta is not German, but it's interesting to watch this character development and to see this. It's reminding me a lot of that special. I wonder if I could look it up now, but yeah, him looking at Wim And poor Wim, and Wim just crying. Yeah, like this poor kid being traumatized. And then he has to stand there and listen to Lunge and Grimmer and all them, and all this is going on. He's like, what the hell is happening? Like, I feel so bad for Wim, right? Like, him and Dieter need to become best friends. If him and Dieter can become like foster brothers, that'd be amazing. I just need Grimmer to adopt Wim, Timma to have Dieter, the four of them go get a house together and start cooking, maybe invite Lunge over for a mother trucking beer. I'm not asking for much, show. I'm asking for a happy ending, and this show is not going to give me that. I guarantee it. And he's like, everything's all right, Wim. Oh. And so Grimmer's like, well, either way, hate to break up this scenario and this happy moment, but there are dead bodies all over town. And it's pretty crazy. And then I love that they both Lunge and Grimmer, like, this is the camera, and you all are the older couple. Lunge and Grimmer are like just slowly turn to the camera, and then they pan back to this elderly couple who have been distributing all the guns. And then Grimmer's like, how many did you hand out? You can feel Grimmer get madder. He's like, how many guns did you give out in this town? And it's like, oh. And he's like, how many people took your guns? And he's like, you better not make me angrier. And then he's like, bad things happen when I get angry. I'm like, oh my God. Like, yeah, Grimmer is literally the Hulk. He is literally Bruce Banner. And he's like, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Oh my God. And he's like, it was just like our grandson. And he's like, what? He's like, he was just like our dead grandson. That's the thing. Johan seems to seek out people who have lost children that look surprisingly like him. And granted, he's blonde hair, blue eyed. That covers a lot of bases in this story geographically. But he tends to find and prey on these people who would look to him as a replacement for what they've lost, and he uses them. Supposedly. Do I trust this old couple? Hell no. I think that they're lying through their teeth, because he looked awfully sinister last episode. Now he's like, it's just because Johan told us to do it. Bullshit. I don't believe that for a second. He's like, our grandson knew us so well. He was just like our real grandson. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, who is he? And he's like, when you wrote a letter to your dead grandson, you were really sending him information. Mm-hmm. Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, so the Lunge's saying, yeah, you say you write letters to your dead grandson, but the reality is you've been sending information to this person the entire time instead. Now, here's the interesting part. Grimmer says, who is he? And that's when Bonaparta says, he is probably after me. Now, we never find out who the he is. And they don't say our beautiful grandson or our blonde hair, blue eyed grandson. I am making an assumption that they're talking about Johan. Poppy / Bonaparta is making an assumption that they are talking about Johan. But for all we know, they could be talking about Roberto and thinking that this guy looks like their grandson Roberto, because neither of these people look like Johan. So we want to make this grand assumption that they're talking about Johan, but they could be talking about Bonaparte. They could be talking about Roberto. They never say who he is. So we never get a name. This series that's just so dependent upon names, we never get it. And it's like, son of a bitch. Yeah, go figure, right? Go figure. And that's when Bonaparta, he finally says, it's me. And he's like, that's right, Mr. Poppy. Uh-huh. And that's when he says his name. Or should we say, I love that Lunge, because right, Klaus Poppy, Grimmer would just know that name because that's the name he goes by in town, right? So that makes sense. But I like that Lunge has to have this moment of being like the ultimate Sherlock, where he like flips the hat and goes, or should we say Franz Bonaparta? Dun dun dun! Like that's like, the lightning flashes. And the way that he looks at the camera there, looking just so, he looks so like just measly there, but oh my God. So meanwhile, we go back to Dieter with Eva, and Dieter's drawing pictures of Tinma while she's hanging out in the house or hanging out in Reichwein's estate, and she's taken up smoking now that she can't drink. And I like that Dieter's like, smoking is not any healthier. Like you're hurting your body in another way now, damn it. And she's also smoked like packs and packs of cigarettes, and Dieter's like, I really wish you'd stop. But they say on the news about the areas being surrounded, right? And she's like, what are you drawing? And he's like, it's Tenma. It is a very good likeness. It does look a lot like Tenma, actually. And she's like, oh, I'll give it to the police the next time they question me. She's like, they never believe the important parts. And that's why I'm going to tell them. And she says, she takes that drag off that cigarette and says, I'm going to tell you this is the man. This is the man who's going to kill a monster by himself. Oh, that drawing is so good. And poor Dieter. I like that Dieter's like, Tenma's going to come back, right? What's so sad is that Dieter is no longer saying, oh, Tenma's not going to kill him, right? Instead, he's kind of accepted the fact that Tenma's going to kill Johan. And he's like, but he's going to come back, right? We're going to see him again, right? That's a death flag in itself. Dieter being like, oh, is he going to come back? And Eva's like, who knows, right? At this point, we don't know because we have no clue what's going to happen. We hope that he does. And then they say, here's a list of some of the damages. And it's like, ugh. But yeah. And then we have Rudy with Reichwein and Nina talking about the email that she gets on her computer. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm glad that Eva is staying with Dieter. I'm glad they're out of the conflict and they seem to be okay. Nina is like, Reichwein, you need to watch over Dieter, watch over Lottie, all of them. Johan is trying to kill everyone that has had connections with him, so y'all need to be careful. I'm glad that we're covering our bases. I don't want any of these people to die, but it's like, what the fudge? And they're like, here's the email. And they're like, to Nina, I'm waiting for you in Ruinheim. Again, that just seems like, it seems so weird because I really want to go back now to the email that she got at the very beginning from him, like back at the beginning of those episodes, because I feel like that email was so more flowery and like more detailed than just, I'm waiting in Ruinheim for you. So I don't know if that's actually Johan or not, or if it was Johan back at the castle. I don't know. We don't know. And Urasawa doesn't tell us exactly, so there's all this speculation. Was it Roberto? Was it Johan? Who knows? And he's like, innocent people are gonna die. And it's like, and she's like, I have to go there. Meanwhile, I love this conversation between Lunge, Grimmer, and Bonaparta. We finally meet him after all this time, and he's this little old man that's been retiring and living a life of ease away from all his crimes. And I don't blame Grimmer for being pissed. Grimmer's like, your stupid ideologies and Kinderheim have made me who I am. You took away my name. You said I could become anyone. Now, or your philosophy says I could become anyone. Now I have, and you took away my life. Like, your ideologies and practices that other people have copied, they took away everything I had. They've killed my friends, and they've, stripped me of my feelings of good and evil I've had to gain back after all this time. He's like, yeah. And you're just sitting here eating bonbons in retirement, like, and atoning, and this is how you do it? Oh, I don't blame him for being mad. Yep. So, but I love Lunge's conversation here, talking about being so odd. At first, I thought you were part of a man's imagination. Just like a character in your picture book. I love the idea of Bonaparta being a character. That he's not real. He's trying to make himself a fictional character, like Johan is trying to get rid of everybody else so that he's like the fictional character. And I love that Lunge's just smirking throughout this whole thing. Lunge's just like, Lunge's like cracking his knuckles, being like, it is time for me to spill the tea, to have my moment. Oh my God. And then as he slowly walks towards him, and I like that Bonaparte is just like Bonaparte doesn't seem to like even want to acknowledge his books at this point. And he's like, I conducted investigations by gathering objective data for many years, but this time I ignored the facts and took a journey through that man's imagination. Lunge's like, you know what? I did an experiment. I was on vacation. I was off the clock. Wasn't getting paid. And I thought, I'll just try something different for once. And it led me to you. That is just absolutely mind-blowing that Lunge's like, yeah, I'm kind of this objective detective, but I decided to like go on a whim, YOLO, and it allowed me to solve this case. What folly, what fun. And I took a journey through a man's imagination and imagined I was you, basically. I put all the clues together. I like he says, half for fun. And I met a man in the Czech Republic who made frequent visits to the Red Rose Mansion. I like that Lunge's like, yeah, I just kind of did this on a whim. And it led me to you and your son. Interestingly enough, Bonaparte does not say anything about his son. He doesn't say anything about Lipsky. He just kind of like stares off like Lipsky wasn't, does he feel like he spared Lipsky? Does he feel like he let Lipsky down? The look on his face is not something of disappointment, and it's not a look of anger. It's just a look of, oh, him. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's very indifferent, which is so fascinating to me. And he's like, and this is a hand-drawn postcard you sent him signed with your real name. Uh-huh. When I found this place and I found you, I got this odd feeling like one of the characters from your books had escaped from the pages. Because, I mean, yeah, like, it's his writing. Of course, his character's art imitates life, right? Oh. And he's like, but this is reality. And I like that, Lunge's having this nice little story about imagination and fairy tales, and Grimmer's like, no. He's like, I'm going to stop you right there and say that, yeah, that's cute, but this is reality. And it's sweet that you did your little whimsical detective journey on vacation and stumbled across this man. But during my research, I like that Grimmer's like, you had your research, now let's talk about mine. The list of people who assisted Czech Republic refugees was this guy, was the name Klaus Poppy. You fled here just before the wall came down. Oh my God. And he's like, what were you running from? And he's like, were you running from someone like me? Yeah, someone. And that's when, he's like, oh shit, you're from Kinderheim. And he's like, yes, I was from Kinderheim, a place based on your design. So yeah, there is a connection between Bonaparta and Kinderheim. Yeah, it's a place based on the design. People copied his ideologies to make Kinderheim. Right? And he says that's where I was made. And of course Bonaparte's like, well, shit, my own creation has come to get me. Did you try to run away from people like me? And that's when he's like, I understand Johan. I know what he's trying to do. He's like, I get it. We've talked in the past about how Grimmer is similar to Johan in their backgrounds and how they hate the system and they want to dismantle the system. Now it's basically that Johan is just trying to erase everyone tied to the system, including himself, where it's just him left. He's going to become like the character in his book, which is genius. He's like, I'm going to become like the character in my book, and everyone around me is going to disappear except for myself. And then he'd probably kill himself once that happens. But Grimmer's like, yeah, no, I get what Johan's trying to do. Johan wants to destroy you because you created the system that tortured him. So I like this idea that Grimmer kind of understands Johan. Interesting. And he's like, now it's actually happening in this town. It's a massacre like what he did back in Kinderheim. And so then we go to the Hotel Bergbach, where there's another gunshot, and we get this girl and frickin' Roberto. Look, show. Look, I don't feel like I'm asking for much. I'm asking for a happy ending with Tinma and Grimmer. I'm fine with this. A happy ending with Lunge and Grimmer. I'm fine with that. I asked a few episodes ago if you would give me a romantic scene between Martin and Eva, and sure, yeah, you did that before you killed him off. But you mean to tell me, Urasawa, you got the balls to draw a sex scene, and it's between this mofo Roberto and this Sailor Moon wannabe? You give us that, and you don't give us like a decent sex scene between characters we actually care about? What is this garbage? Ridiculous. Bogus. Here's the thing. This is the problem. This is probably the first time I can honestly say that, like, there's a character physically, Roberto's hot. Like, from the neck down, Roberto's got it going on. From the head up, and once he opens his mouth, it's done. Bye. Nope. He's just sludge. He's like so gross. And I'm like, why is it that we get a sex scene with him and her, and we can't have a sex scene between people I actually care about? Why? And he's like, all the memories are going to disappear. Meaning that all the memories of this town are going to disappear, which include you. So I'm not gonna be surprised if he like has sex with her and then kills her. Why, Urasawa? Why do we have to have sex scenes with characters we don't care about? Blech. Anyway, so I like that Reichwein's like, we're not letting you have a gun, and Gillen is coming with you, which on the surface seems like an idea for Nina. Don't give her a gun. We don't want her to like do anything reckless, but also they're about to walk into a lawless town where everyone has guns and are shooting each other. Giving her a gun might not be a bad idea. Just saying. And Rudy, I'm worried for him now. At least Reichwein seems like he's going to live because he's going to help protect the others, but we can't say anything because we don't know. But I'm like, Rudy, I'm afraid of. Nina, I'm afraid of. What if Rudy gets shot and Nina takes his gun and goes Rambo too? We don't know. And she's like, I don't need a gun. She's like, I'm going to take a wooden spoon and shank somebody with it. I'm just like, ugh. And she's like, get everybody else that Johan knows about. He's trying to erase all memories of himself. I do love that shot where she looks at the window and sees like Dieter with the picture of Tinma. I do love that shot. It's so good. And she looks so sad there. I want her to be able to see all of them again. I want this series to have a happy ending, damn it. And I don't know if it is. Everything about this episode is setting up that things are not going to end happily. That there's going to be people die. That it's not going to be good. I do like, though, that Reichwein says, you want to keep these memories of Dieter, of Tinma, of yourself, of your family, of the Fortners. What about Johan? What about your memories of him? And she's like, I don't want them to disappear. I can't let them disappear. And that's such a big difference between her and Johan, is that it's like Johan is trying to destroy all traces of his past trauma. He's trying to, it's like him saying, well, I'll get rid of the trauma by just erasing everyone connected to it and getting rid of it. And it's like, that's not how that works. And I like that Nina is different from her brother in saying, I don't want to get rid of my brother's memories. I don't want to get rid of memories of someone I care about, even after all the stuff they've done. That's not going to help me grow as a person. That's not going to make things better. You're not going to learn unless you know your past. She's like, I don't want to forget him. And I think that's so important because I think Johan, the action he's taking is to forget everyone. And she's trying to do the exact opposite, which is so interesting. Meanwhile, so Tinma shows up on the scene. I'm like, Tinma's here. Where the timelines are converging. He saves this one guy, and then this one guy shows up and tells him everybody in the town are dying, even the women and children. They're shooting each other. Everybody's got guns. It's not good. He's like, save the children. And I love that Tinma is the doctor, and this guy tells him over and over again to save people. And that's what he's doing. And it goes back, all I can think of is it goes back to Grimmer telling him that you're a doctor and you have to keep going because you have jobs to do. And his job is to save people. Oh my God. Yeah. And I do like the parallel in this episode where you have Grimmer hugging Wim to him and saving him as he lives. And then you have Tinma hugging this man who dies in his arms and vows to save the town. The poetry, y'all. Are y'all seeing this? And then Lunge is like, so Johan, this scene got me, okay? Let's get back to this. It's like, Johan, the first time I heard that name, I thought it was in 1995 from that brain surgeon statement. And he's like, Dr. Tenma. And Grimmer's like, yeah, so you acknowledged that your logic was wrong. He doesn't! No! I like that Grimmer and Bonaparte are like, yes, so now that we've acknowledged that Johan is a person, and that he's kind of the center of all this, and Grimmer's like, so I feel like it's such a setup to a joke. Grimmer's like, so you admit that you were wrong, right? And Lunge goes, bitch, no. He's still the prime suspect in my mind. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Are you shitting me, Lunge? No. He's like, oh no, he's still the prime suspect. No, I'm not letting him go. And he's like, yeah. He's like, and Johan is still just an imaginary person. I'm like, the fuck? And Grimmer's like, what? But you, what? Grimmer and Bonaparte's face is everything in this moment because they're both like, you're a psychopath. Yeah. They're like, are you freaking serious? And Lunge's like, yeah, an imaginary person. During this vacation, the words that caught my attention are these. How does a real person become an imaginary one? And that is, the answer is simple. I like that Lunge says is like he's just figured it all out. Like he solved the world's problems. He's like, the answer is simple. Eliminate all those who know the person and all those who know that person's past. That's how, in the end, he'll become like the end of your books, Franz Bonaparta. Like, Lunge is so proud that he's figured this all out. Lunge is so proud he's cracked the code, that he's figured out what's happening, that he's cracked the code. But the fact that he still will not admit that he's wrong, he will not admit that Tenma is innocent, is the funniest damn thing. He's just like, oh no, yeah, no, Johan's still an imaginary person, but we're going to be out here to kind of maybe stop him from completing that mission. So we'll just have to see. I'm like, oh my God. Just absolutely insanity. I freaking love it. And then Grimmer's like, well, what do we do? What do we do about this? What do we do? But Lunge is so proud. He's so proud of himself in this moment. He finally had a name, but all those who knew about it disappeared. All those who could call him by that name disappeared. And that's literally what's been happening this entire... I can't believe I didn't connect it better, but that's literally what's been happening this entire time. Like Wolf, everybody, he's isolated them and killed them off so that it's just him. And Johan was such a wonderful name too. And then he's like, what if that's what's happening in this town? Which is exactly it. And Grimmer's like, well, that's what I would do if I was Johan. And again, Grimmer acknowledging him and Johan are very similar, right? The monster of the East, the monster of the West. And so then he's like, and I'm also an imaginary person. He's like, I'm not who I say I am. He's like, I have no name. I'm not anyone. And that goes back. We immediately cut to Bonaparta, who we heard tell Nina, humans can become anyone. And they didn't want the twins to have names, right? Oh, it's so good. And so he's like, so I'll disappear as well, along with all the others who had their memories and names taken from them. Grimmer's acknowledging, he's like, even if I don't die today, which, fingers crossed, knock on all the wood, I still think it's going to happen. You could consider this a death flag, but he says, even if I don't die today, I don't have a name. I don't have an identity. I just have a fake one. And when I do die, no one's going to know who I am. And all the people from Kinderheim, all the people who had their memories and names taken from them are never going to be known. They're never going to live on in people's memories because they won't be remembered. And I'm like, Grimmer, you're going to be remembered forever, dude. Don't say that, right? And then that's when Bonaparte says, I've been waiting here for my judgment. And at that point, that's when there's this little silence. He's like, oh, I'm not scared of dying, but I don't know how to pay for what I've done. And that sets Grimmer off, where he's like, oh, excuse me. He's like, I just decided to accept everything that happens here. And that's when Grimmer gets pissed. He's like, oh, you were waiting. Oh, So you did all this horrible stuff and then you didn't know how to pay for it. So you're like, well, I'll just lock myself away and then just wait for judgment. It reminds me a lot of, this is kind of early on Attack on Titan stuff. So, as long as my hand is waving in the air, I'm going to be talking about Attack on Titan spoilers. So just know that. Just so you're aware, as long as my hand is waving, Attack on Titan spoilers. In Attack on Titan, we find out very early on that a lot of people are isolated because they felt guilty for the things that they had done in the past. And so they isolated themselves, waiting for death to come for them. But one of the big morals of the story is, well, just because you're waiting for atonement, that's a stupid thing. You should have paid for that in another way. And now you caused all this damage. And that's not atonement. So yeah, end of Attack on Titan spoilers. But he's like, this does not atone. You can't just do all this bad shit and then go wait in a dark cave for a bear to come find you and eat you. And I don't blame Grimmer for being mad, because it's kind of like, what if that never happened? What if he just lived out the rest of his days in this peaceful little village? Like, well, I guess I'll just end my life here and that'll be fine. No, he's like, that's not the same. He's like, you have to take responsibility. He's like, you were waiting? You aren't scared of dying? And then he grabs him and he's like, do you understand how serious your crime is? Do you understand what it means to destroy a person's sense of good and evil? Yeah, and Grimmer's like, do you know what it's like to not feel anything when your son dies? What happens when you awaken the monster inside of people? It's almost as if Poppy never, because we said the episode was called The Monster's Love Letter. But it's almost like Poppy never even had a monster inside of him, or he didn't know that he did. All he did was awaken the monster inside of other people, but he never really had one inside of himself. So he doesn't understand what that's like, or he's one of those people that was just kind of like numb from the beginning and never had a sense of good and evil himself. So him taking away from others, he doesn't know what that means. And Grimmer's just kind of like, do you realize what you've done? Like, you've done this to people. And he doesn't answer the question. Poppy just stands there. And Grimmer, in this moment, you realize how huge Grimmer is. Like, Wim's a little kid there. But Bonaparta is a grown-ass man. And Grimmer looks like the Hulk next to him. He's like, people need to think that food is delicious. And what does he say there? People need to enjoy a picnic on their day off. I was like, this was the part where I started getting death flags, because I was like, Grimmer's saying, he's like, people need to enjoy the taste of food. People need to enjoy a picnic on their day off. I'm like, you were talking about having a damn picnic with Tinma. Don't you be taking that back. Don't you be death flagging it. And then when he says that people need to cherish a beer after they have after work, and then Lunge was like, let's have a beer after this. I'm like, the death flags are out. The death flags are there. I'm like, no. He's like, people are supposed to feel sorrow from the bottom of their heart when a child dies. Yeah. And he's like, I didn't feel anything when my son died. And Johan didn't feel anything when these kids died. That's a problem. That's a problem. And he's like, I'm not going to let you die. And that was the third death flag, when he's like, I'm going to protect you and make sure you don't die so that you live to suffer and tell people about it. And I was like, that's death flags for me. Because the moment Grimmer's like, I'm going to protect this one person, I'm like, that is just setting up for Grimmer to get shot. I'm like, And if he is actively taking the role of trying to keep Bonaparta alive, and Johan's whole MO is to kill Bonaparta, then you have these two opposing forces clashing. These two monsters are clashing over the author of their stories. I mean, it's cinematic. It's narrative gold, but I'm like, I don't want Grimmer to die. And he's like, I'm going to get you out of this town and make you tell them all you know and show the world the true nature of the monster you have awakened. And I'll protect you until then. And that's when Lunge goes over and he's like, where's Johan? They're like, we don't know. And he's like, well, there has to be someone orchestrating this carnage, and it's Roberto. And they're like, where is he? And they're like, we don't know. And they're like, where is he? And that's when, like, Lunge pulls out the gun and he's like, bitch, I ain't playing around. So then Timma finds the people Puts the gun down. I was so scared he was going to get shot in this moment. I was like, Timma's going to get shot. He is going to get shot by somebody. This whole episode, I keep thinking somebody's just going to snipe these people out from nowhere because of that episode where Sook and Grimmer were inside the warehouse getting sniped. I keep thinking that's going to happen throughout this, but not yet. And he's like, it's dangerous. We have to get out of here. And then they say the man giving the orders is at the Berg Bach Hotel, which is Roberto. Roberto's giving the orders. At first, I thought they were talking about the man running the Berg Bach Hotel, but no, they're talking about Roberto. And then, yeah. And that's where Lunge's like, okay. But I like that Roberto is so... I like that Lunge is so, like, objective and connotative about it, where he's like, but I only have one gun. And then Grimmer's like, I found these hillbillies. I misjudged. And Urasawa makes you realize how judgmental you are. These two dumbass hillbillies that won the lottery, I thought they were going to be the ones shooting up people, causing the powder keg, causing the explosion. No. They were like the biggest red herring. They're as red herring as that man's hat. That's red too. Instead of causing, and maybe them giving Lunge and Grimmer the guns are going to be causing their demise, and that's just fate, but they end up giving them the guns. I was like, okay. Also, on hindsight, I was like, why is Grimmer not the one with the shotgun stuff? But then I'm like, Grimmer can kind of take care of himself. He's basically the Hulk. He just needs one gun, kind of like Tenma. But I love that Lunge takes the rifle and the other gun, just straps it on his shoulder like freaking Rambo. And he's like, all right, let's go. And they're like, the residents have guns too. And he's like, I'm a detective. I can tell the difference. And I'm like, oh my God. He's like, I do this for a living, Grimmer. We got this. And then he's like, oh, Mr. Grimmer, when this job is over, buy me a beer. I was like, don't death flag him, Lunge. Don't. But maybe that's a sign that Lunge is going to die. I don't know. I'm just like, oh my God. And then he's like, I sure will. Lunge's promising to have beers with people, have picnics with people, or Grimmer is promising people to do this. I'm like, And then, yeah. And then that's the end of the episode. I'm bracing myself for the worst. That everybody's going to die. Bracing myself. But at this point, I followed these characters all this time. I don't want any of them to die. I mean, Roberto, get him out of here. Get Roberto out of here once and for all. Get him out of here. But I don't want Lunge to die. I don't want Grimmer to die. I don't want Timma to die. I don't want Rudy or Nina to die. I want Wim to be okay. Bonaparta, I'm almost with Grimmer at this point. I don't really want Bonaparta to die now. I want him to be able to tell a story and not get off easy. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to die. And then Johan, I kind of don't want him to die either. Because I think Johan wants to die. But he wants to get all this other shit done first. And I'm kind of like, no, you and Bonaparta need to live. But we have 4 episodes left. And once again, I have no earthly idea what is going to happen. Except I'm probably going to be hyped up, and I hope y'all are ready. I know it's going to be super hard to not spoil me in the comments. So if you feel like you cannot comment without spoiling, then that's okay. We got 4 more episodes. Keep your novels ready. We'll do this, and we'll have a follow-up episode after that that'll kind of decompress the series and do that. But yeah, that's where we're at. Hope y'all are ready. So I'm not, but what can we do? So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and dear sweet baby Jesus, I'll be back real soon with episode 71 of Monster. Bye.